Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live stream. Thank you all so much for joining us. We are currently live. I am based in Dubai right now. We're live from Dubai, and my guest speaker, Somileze, who is also a fellow Microsoft Cloud advocate, is live from Africa. Thank you all so much for joining us today in the second episode of the Content Manager application series. So, this is where we talk all about building an AI powered content manager application. So that's what we actually did in yesterday's episode. And today we're actually going to boost the process of that application that we've already built with Someleze, of course. And he's going to show us all the cool things that we can do using Azure OpenAI and all that cool stuff. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm gonna kind of, actually before we begin, I would love to know where everyone is joining us from. So yesterday we had a very lively audience from all over the world. We had people from Sweden, from Madrid, from France, from Dubai, from Africa, and many more people. So please let us know in the comments where you're joining us from. We would love to actually know. That being said, of course, as we all know, this event is part of our Microsoft Reactor Code of Conduct. So obviously, we're all here to learn. So let's make this a friendly environment as much as possible. Of course, we are always open to hearing from you. Let us know if you have any questions throughout the live stream, and we'll make sure to answer as many of them as possible by the end of the stream. Just also be respectful and be kind. Thank you all so much for joining us once again. And that being said, I am going to introduce myself to anyone who has not seen me before. Hi, everyone. My name is Hadeel Shubair, and I'm a regional cloud advocate and data analytics engineer at Microsoft, specifically part of the Reactor team in Middle East and Africa. I am currently based in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. So obviously, it's kind of always hot summer weather here. And I'm all about sharing and very passionate about sharing all things knowledge and everything that has to do with the tech industry. So I'm very kind of mainly focused on kind of learning more about and talking passionately about data analytics and data science. I'm also kind of always intrigued in learning more about other different topics like low code and no code and kind of Azure AI and many other kind of topics that are always, booming out there. And this is where I have, of course, I'm joined with Somleze, who is an expert in Power Platform and low code and no code, and he will be joining me today to, of course, talk about everything from that. Somleze, thank you so much for joining us today again. I'm losing my voice, so I'm gonna give you the show to introduce yourself to the audience and let us know what we have on the agenda for today.
Of course, thanks, Hadil. Welcome back, everyone. And my name is Samuel Zadigo. For those who do not know me, I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft that is based out in Durban, South Africa. And I love building solutions with the Power Platform. Hence, we're here today, Teams, Azure, and Microsoft Graph, and also adding in a little bit of AI to all of the different solutions and projects that I actually work on, which is the reason why we are here today as well, because we want to showcase how to actually build solutions that are powered by AI and also using the Power Platform. So hopefully everyone's going to be learning quite a lot today, and as well as through the different kinds of learnings. I normally share them on my social media, and you can reach out to me on Twitter at Digo Someleze and then on LinkedIn as well. So it'll be Someleze Digo, so that I can be able to connect with communities and see what they actually are up to and what they actually work on around the different solutions and the different technologies that they are normally interested in. So if you weren't here today, you might try to understand what it is that we're trying to do with this entire series. And the series is actually focused on enabling you to be able to build a full blown solution using the Power Platform. But in this case, you are trying to add in some AI into that specific solution. And the Content Manager series actually enables you to build a project out of the entire series. So today we're wrapping up the series and we are showcasing the second part of the entire project. And it actually leverages Power Apps and Power Automate and some of some a little bit of Power FX as well that is included. We saw it yesterday on Power Apps Ideas, and I didn't need to write it myself. We used AI to generate the formulas within Power Apps. And today we're going to be focusing on Power Automate and showcasing how we can be able to do that. Again, today's session is around boosting the content manager process with Azure OpenAI service. So I have some exciting things to showcase today around AI. We've seen how AI is powerful within Power Apps. We want to see it within Power Automate and how we can be able to do so. So before we can actually begin, I normally say whenever I'm doing these sessions around what's a series without a Cloud Skills Challenge. We have a Cloud Skills Challenge that you can be able to register for the entire series. You can either follow the link that's on the screen or you can scan the QR code on the screen so that you can be able to have a gamified experience whilst learning with others. And obviously, you will see a leaderboard on the Cloud Skills Challenge. And that Cloud Skills Challenge has everything that you would need to know about Azure OpenAI service and also around Power Apps and Power Automate and the different Power FX formulas that we used within Power Apps and the expressions that we're going to be using within Power Automate. So make sure you register for this Cloud Skills Challenge and start your learning quite quickly. So today's episode is more focused and centric around boosting the content manager process with Azure OpenAI service. We saw that we can be able to build an interface using Power Apps where you can be able to submit your blog. For an example, if you are writing a blog and you're using the interface to just save your information or your blog information onto your data source. Now we actually want to leverage all of that information and actually add in a few business requirements. And those business requirements, ideally, they are more centric around you understanding how to be able to have your first draft, your initial draft of the blog that you said you're going to be writing through that interface built with Power Apps. Now you want to have that initial draft, and then afterwards you can be able to edit it. But there's a catch to this because you want to add in AI to be able to have that initial draft for you, and then you can be able to edit it and improve whatever AI had suggested for you to start building around the content for your blog. So that is the entire episode for today, and we'll see how we can be able to build that using the different technologies that we have at our disposal. So, speaking about the technologies, if you are new to the series and you are new to the Power Platform and you hear me talking about Power Automate and you don't know what Power Automate is about, Power Automate is part of the Power Platform um, product family. So the Power Platform is a low code, no code platform or technology that you can be able to use to build solutions without writing any extensive code. You can use Power Pages for your website development. You can use Power Apps for your application development, Power Automate for your workflow automation or your business process automation, Power BI for your business analytics, Power Virtual Agents for your intelligence virtual agents or chatbots. And ideally, within the Power Platform, you can be able to use pre built system integrations through connectors. So, ideally, students and rising developers, whether you are just starting out with the Power Platform, you can be able to have some form of integration throughout the Office 365 space and throughout other technologies that you are interested in using connectors within the Power Platform. And ideally, even professional developers can do some professional development and extensibility across the Microsoft 365 space. And we have a language called PowerFX, like I mentioned earlier on, which is something that we actually used for our previous session, which it's ideally your English instructions that you are putting out there for your solutions. And we have AI Builder as a form of AI within the Power Platform, but it has been extended a little bit, and we want to actually showcase that during this session. And ideally, before we can be able to dive into deep around how we can use Power Platform, we need to think about this series in particular because we are trying to build an AI powered content manager app, and we're boosting this content manager process using Azure OpenAI service, which brings me to the partnership that Microsoft has with OpenAI. So, ideally, this partnership is around enabling every organization out there and everyone out there to be able to utilize AI in their solutions that they're building and the different technologies that we have here at Microsoft, from your Power Platform to your Azure. And throughout this partnership, we have three models which are a form of generative AI. We have GPT-3, where you are able to use prompt-based text that you can just either say you want to write a tagline for an ice cream shop, and then the response will be obviously in a form of a text, just responding to your prompt. And then we have Codex, where ideally it will actually understand your prompt in terms of your natural language and also understand some form of code, so that you can be able to either say you want to generate, for an example, a table for customers or a SQL table, and then obviously it'll create that query for you using Codex model. And then Dolly is more on you giving a prompt on either you want to generate an image based off of a white cat, and then it will respond by giving you that image around the AI. So those are the three generative AI models that we have through this partnership with Microsoft and OpenAI. So those are very awesome technologies that you can be able to explore and build within your solutions. And we're going to be using one of them actually within our solution today that we are building. Right. Again, just a little bit brief of how AI has evolved within the Power Platform. We've had AI Builder introduced in 2019, and then from there, we've had different variations of AI within the Power Platform. So, Power Apps, just like we saw yesterday, Power Apps has the Power Apps Copilot, so that you can be able to build your app using your natural language through a prompt. If you want to build an application for your blog content, it will then take that prompt and build the application for you. Similar to Power Apps, Power Automate has a similar feature that you can utilize to build your Power Automate flows. And then Power BI has your natural language can be taken from your prompt to a DEX quick create formula. And then within Power Virtual Agents, we have conversation boosters, and you can also have a similar co-pilot within Power Virtual Agents of just prompting the AI to build you a chatbot based off of your specific prompt or your specific scenario. So that's the evolution of the of AI within the Power Platform. Okay, we've spoken about the partnership between Microsoft and OpenAI and how the AI has evolved within the Power Platform. And during the series, we actually spoke about solution considerations to build this process and to build the entire application or the entire solution that we have. And the first session actually focused on building the front end and the back end, even though we had a little bit of help from Power Apps Copilot to actually just build the application for us and build the Dataverse custom table that we had for our application. Today, we're focusing on the middleware. The middleware is ideally just you automating the business processes at the back end. For an example, if you have an approval process in which that's something we might see today, and you would have notification process involved within your middleware. Right. So how will you then build this specific middleware for your solution? Which technology or which product within the Power Platform can you use to build your middleware to automate those processes? And the key word is actually automate. We will use Microsoft Power Automate to build the solution. And within Power Automate, as I've spoken earlier on, considering the partnership between Microsoft and OpenAI, we have an AI innovation within Power Automate. So within Power Automate, we have a feature called Describe It to Design It, where you can simply describe the automated workflow you want in everyday language, your natural language, and say, I want to post a Teams message when I receive an email every day, and then Power Automate will generate that Power Automate flow for you, and then Power Automate will transform your words as if it's by magic, designing the ready-made flow you can use as is, or you can then be able to customize it. What I want you to note is that within this flow that's being created, or the creation of the flow, the experience is built on a machine learning model called OpenAI Codex, which is a descendant of GPT-3, one of the models that we just spoke about through the partnership of Microsoft and OpenAI. So the training data contains both natural language and a large number of sample cloud flows, a large number of cloud flows that are already existing within Power Automate, and it works best with Microsoft 365 connectors. And then ideally, within that, it's not really just limited to just describing your Power Automate flow. You can take it a step further, just like how we saw with Power Apps ideas. You can have a format data by examples. So you do not know how to write specific expressions within Power Automate, and you are trying to look for it within documentation. And I know in my experience, it took me a while to find that specific expression that I was looking for. But now, with the introduction of the format data by examples, you can be able to use the data by examples feature to access these expressions without knowing the different functions and corresponding syntax that's needed to create the expressions that you want. What I want you to note with that is that it doesn't necessarily take away from you learning about the expressions within Power Automate. And I would advise you that whenever you are using this feature, you can be able to look at that expression and understand the prompt that you gave the format data by examples, the AI, so that you can be able to understand that I want to achieve X, and then this feature gave me this formula, and it actually achieves my end goal. So this is how it actually works, or this is how it looks like, and then you can be able to either try it on your own, or you can carry on using that feature. But again, you can just provide examples of the output format that you want in the flow to produce, and Power Automate will automatically generate the expression formula to use within your flow, right? It sounds very cool when you are using AI to actually enhance your developing experience within the Power Platform and within Power Automate. Which brings me to another addition to the Power Platform, the OpenAI connector. So when you want to connect to the OpenAI API and use the power of GPT-3, you could I potentially have two options. One of the options is through a custom connector that was built by our good friend Robin, who then ideally just created this OpenAI connector so that we can be able to use ChatGPT-3 within Power Automate. But ideally, when you are using this custom connector, you must have an API key that must be entered. As you can see on the screen, it will have barrier and then space, and then you can put your API key. You can get your API key from the openai.com website. And then obviously another custom connector, or another feature from the custom connector, is that you can be able to create an image which utilizes the DALL-E AI model that we spoke about earlier on. And then GPT-3 completes your prompt, is more ideally just using ChatGPT-3 to generate certain text that you want within your Power Automate flow. One thing to note is that it's not necessarily shareable using that custom connector. So whoever you're sharing your Power Automate flow with, or your solution with, they would need to provide their own connection to that custom connector, meaning that they would need to have their own API key. They would need to go fetch it on the openai.com website. Right. So that is ideally one of the options that you would have. And then the other option, which is something that we're going to touch on today, is using the Azure OpenAI AI builder model that would ideally have the similar features as the custom connector, but ideally now it's no longer a custom connector, it's an official connector within the Power Platform. So without wasting any more time, let's just build and automate this process already. And you can then see those different things that I just spoke about in action in terms of the solution that we actually built the entire time. So I'm just going to quickly try and switch to my browser And within my browser, I'm going to go on make.powerautomate.com. So I'm just going to try and zoom in a little bit so that you can be able to see the screen. And then I'm on home, on the home tab within Power Automate, and I want to create a flow. So I'm going to click on create. Before we actually create this flow, I want you to think about this. We already have a Power App that is taking in information about our blog, for an example, or about the content that we want to manage, right? We have a flow about that. So think of it this way. Once you submit information using the interface that we built using Power Apps, once it's been submitted and I want to write a blog, but ideally, before I can write this blog, I need my team to understand that I'm writing this blog and this blog is due by a certain date, or if we have someone that needs to approve a specific blog before it gets published, right? So I need to have a task that is ideally assigned to me to say, this is your task to do before this specific date or before the published date that you put on your application, so that you can be able to control how your content is being published to the public. So you don't want any conflicting schedules around distributing your content or around distributing your blogs. So you have that. You want, whenever I submit a new blog, I want a task to be created against my name so that I can be able to know that it's due by this date. But also, I want to have a draft that I can be able to work on and edit, right? So, how can we be able to achieve that? Normally, I'd say to you, follow the traditional steps of building a Power Automate flow in terms of building your own automated cloud flow, naming it, adding in your trigger, and adding in all of your actions. But today, I actually want to showcase the power of AI within Power Automate as well. Similar to how we use Power Apps Copilot, we're going to use the feature called Describe It to design it within Power Automate. It's in public preview. You can be able to try it out and use it within your own environments. So you can be able to use this. So once I click on that, it will take me to this screen. So this screen is waiting for a prompt from me to specify what kind of flow do I want to build. So I'm gonna provide a prompt that either says, for an example, it has an example here, when a new task is created in Planner, copy it to Excel, or send an email reminder every week, or when someone mentions me by email, send me a Teams message. So it will then generate a Power Automate flow for us. But this doesn't necessarily meet my requirements. So what do I want? So I'm going to put it in words. I'm going to put my own natural language to what I want. I'm going to say, create a planner task when a new record is added. So the reason why I say create a planner task when a new record is added is because I am taking into consideration my data source. My data source is Dataverse, and all of the information that is stored within Dataverse is called records. So you have a table that is storing all of the records of your content or all of the records of whatever table structure you actually have. So after that, I press on enter or I click on submit, and then the describer to design it will work its magic and use AI, and then it will suggest a Power Automate flow for me, and then it will give me a trigger, which is when a row is added or modified or deleted within Dataverse. So that meets my condition because I submit and save the content from my Power App to Dataverse. And then the next action that I want to happen is that I want to create a planner task that will be assigned to me, right? So the action also meets my requirements, but ideally there's certain stuff that are still missing, but I am okay and happy with the suggested flow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on next, and then ideally, Power Automate will then prompt me to actually set up the connections. So if I didn't have any connections already set up for Microsoft Dataverse and Planner, it will then ask me to set them up, ideally by just signing in into my account. So if you get to the step and they ask you to sign in, you may need to sign in into your Office 365 account that you're using within the Power Platform. And then you can see at the right hand side of the screen, it still shows me the trigger and the action of the flow. So because I'm happy and I have my connection set, I'm going to click on next, and then it'll create the flow. It'll work the magic. It'll create the flow for me. And then you can see now I have my trigger and I have my action. So you think to yourself and say, Someleze, what's the next step, or what's the first step to take now in terms of modifying our Power Automate flow that was built using AI? So the first step is to actually choose a table to point our trigger to the right table where when we want to see whenever a new record is added or whenever a new row is added within our table. So what we're gonna do is search for the table that was created yesterday using Power Apps Copilot. So I'm gonna click on blog information. That's the name of the table, and then ideally everything will be okay for my trigger. And then the next step is I have an action that says create a task, but before I can actually create this task, there's a few steps that I actually need. And one of those steps being, I actually want to generate a draft blog out of this new blog that is being submitted from Power Apps. So this draft blog will then be sent back to whoever requested it so that they can be able to make changes and they can be able to ideally approve or reject what they have, right? So I'm going to click on insert a new step and I'm going to add another action. And then this next action that I'm actually adding in is in the form of AI Builder, right? I'm going to search for AI Builder, and then you will see a list of different actions that are available within the AI Builder connector. And the one that we're looking for is the one with Azure OpenAI service, which is create text with GPT on Azure OpenAI service so that we can be able to generate this draft blog for the requester, right? So I'm going to choose that. And then once I choose that, this action would then prompt me into providing instructions to what I wanted to do. So first of the options that I can is that I can just start typing here and generate instructions based off of what I want, or I can just click on the create instructions button here, which will be a little bit more controlled or give me a little bit of examples or options to choose from of what I actually want to do. So what you're going to see once I click on create instructions, it will actually suggest to try a template, which is either I want to summarize the text using this model, either I want to respond to a complaint, whether I want to create blog posts, whether I want to start from blank. My interest is actually creating a blog post, just generating a draft blog so that someone can be able to then go back and actually make edits to the blog, and then they can start publishing it on that specific website for the entire team or for the entire organization or for the entire company. So I'm going to choose create blog posts, and then it will then give us a prompt, an already existing prompt, which is try to create a blog post on the topic below, and then it gives more instructions on what the model is supposed to do, right? Because I am happy with this and I'm using a template that is there, I would either just accept it as it is by clicking on use instructions on a flow, and then it'll put it on the instructions text box. And then the question is, okay, so Meleza, I see that you are using the instructions from the template, but ideally, how will this model know which blog topic to generate this draft blog on, right? And that would be a very great question. So I'm just going to click on got it here, and then I'm going to come to this prompt that actually says, or comment that says include your text here. So ideally, this is where we want to control our model to look at, which is the start of the topic, which is the start of the blog title or the blog topic, and we're going to provide it here. So what I'm going to do is, which is normally sometimes this would look a little bit fuzzy. So I'm just going to click away and then try to click back. And then I'm going to remove the comment. Yeah, I'm going to remove that comment. I do not want to There's a term that I used back in university saying hard coding specific values. So I do not want to hard code the value of the blog title or the blog topic. I want it to be dynamic. I want it to come from my data source and not for me to just provide it here, because imagine you have 10 different people writing blogs and it's generating the same draft blog for all of them, but they are talking about different topics. So if you have it as dynamic, then you can be able to cater for all of those 10 different topics, right? Okay, then the next step is to actually go to the dynamic content. So you'll see this pop-up dialog box on the right-hand side of the screen. What we know about our Dataverse table is that it stores the title of the blog, the author, and the content and the description. What we are interested in is the title of the blog, which is the topic of the blog. So I'm going to search for title and then just paste it in there. I didn't change anything else. I just put in the title of the blog and I put it as the topic. So I'm just gonna quickly fix that and add the square brackets as they were earlier on. And then if I am happy with this and everything is good, then I can move on to actually adding in more steps. But wait, you would notice at the top right hand side of the screen or corner, you'll see that there is an issue with the flow checker. And what ideally happens is that it actually gives you errors here. So, for an example, it's talking about or complaining about the required information that I didn't put on my planner task. But another thing that I want you to note is that whenever you are using this Azure OpenAI service or this AI builder model within Power Automate, is that always have an approval step so that you can be able to have the responsible AI. You do not want people to be generating text using the model not so responsibly. So you want to have responsible AI, and one way to achieve this is to actually have an approval step. So you're going to add an action, and then that action would be to start and wait for an approval. So I'm going to click on this option, and then it will ask me for an approval type. So I normally have my personal favorite, which is the first to respond. If there's only one person approving that specific request or that specific blog request, and then the title would be blog request. So anything that you want to be on the subject of an email, because this will send an email to whoever's approving this. So I'm going to say blog request for, and then I'm going to add in the title of the blog, right? And then I'm going to assign it to a specific person. So I'll assign it to one of the users that I actually have within my developer account or developer environment. I'm going to search there, and then it's going to load, and then I can assign it to them. And then if I want to add in more details around what this request is about, then I can actually add in those details. And what I love about this specific step is that we can actually add in details around the original request or the original information of the blog, and also the information that was generated by the AI model, right? So I'm gonna say, hi team, please advise on the below to either approve or reject based on community guidelines, for an example, right? So you'll have that. And then I'm gonna say here at the top, original request. And then at the bottom after that, I'm gonna put the title of the blog. And then at the bottom, I'm gonna say um, GPT GPT generated information, and then I'm going to say here, I'm going to use dynamic content that comes from our previous step using the AI builder model that uses Azure OpenAI service, right? So I'm going to use text, and text will then obviously give back that response based off of the instructions that we have here around that blog that is being requested, right? And that should be fine in terms of my approval request. Now, the next step is to actually have a condition. So if that specific request that I submitted, let's say for an example to Hadeel, meets those community guidelines and she approves the request, then either it needs to send me an email and create that planner task. If it's been rejected, then we'll send an email to just let me know that it has been rejected. So you would need a condition between those two because you don't want to have a start and wait for an approval, and then it's approved. It creates the planner task, and then it's rejected again, and then it still creates the planner task, even though it's not using the AI responsibly. So you do not want to have a situation like that. So this is where I'll add another action, and then in this case, I can see that there's condition, so I'm going to choose condition, and then it'll ask me to choose a value. So the value that I'm looking for using dynamic content from the previous step is responses, um, responses, approver, response. So the response from the approver. And then obviously, if it's a lot of responses, it'll put it on and apply to each. But obviously, if it's one, it's not gonna loop through. It's just loop through one of those responses, right? And then is equal to, and then it's equal to the value of approve, not approved, approve. So when you are using this action, which is start and wait for an approval, you will have to equate it to approve. So the value that comes here when someone clicks on the approve button on that adaptive card, it will store the value as approve and not approved. So that's one of the things that you would need to keep in mind whenever you are doing a Power Automate flow that has an approval step and you have a condition to check based off of that. I spent probably 3 hours trying to debug why my flow was not running successfully because I was just equating it to the wrong value, right? If it's equal to approve, then if yes, I'll add another action. Before I can add another action, remember that action that was generated by AI for us using the describe it to design it feature. Let's take that and actually add it to the if yes part of our condition. So you can be able to just drag and drop it. This is one of the reasons why I love Power Platform, that you can drag and drop stuff. So I'm going to drag and drop it within the if yes part of our approval, our condition, and then I can expand that, right? So it'll ask me for a group ID, a plan ID, a title of that task, and then obviously all of the other details of the task, right? So the group ID, I'm just going to use one of the dummy groups that I have within my developer account. So I'm just going to put this one. I was developing and doing demos, and then the plan ID is similar to the group ID. So if you create a planner plan within Planner, you can name it whatever you want, and then obviously you can be able to pull it within Power Automate. And then the title would be, I will then go use dynamic content. It'll be the title from our blog, right? From the blog that we submitted using Power Apps. So I'll choose title so that we can be able to know on our blog calendar or whatever that we have and put it there, right? We'll use title of the blog. Then it'll ask for the start date, the due date. So I will say the start date of our request. For an example, I would either use one of Dataverse's hidden columns or standard columns. So that one of them is the created on column, that created on actually stores the value of the date whenever you save new information, new data into your Dataverse table on the specific day and specific time. Then I'm going to click on created on, and then the due date would be the date that we inputted as the due date that we wanted to have on the Power App. So we're going to go to dynamic content and search for date, and then you'd find date from the trigger action, or from the when a row is added, modified, or deleted trigger, and then you choose date because that signifies what we have um, within our Dataverse table. But you would find that that data actually is in a different format. So if you wanted to format this, for an example, if you wanted to format it to only just showcase um, in a specific format, like a South African format, just like how we did with Power Apps, what can you use if you do not know the expressions to do that? So you would then quickly go click on expressions on the same column or on the same field. You click on expressions, and then you choose format data by examples. So that's one of the features that we have within Power Automate. You click on that, then it will show you all of the different actions that you have within your Power Automate flow, including your trigger, and then you look for the right one that you want. So I'm just gonna collapse the other ones that I don't need, and then I'm gonna look at the trigger because the trigger actually has the date that we're looking for, the publish date that we want to format, right? So there's date. I'm gonna choose date from the um, values available to me, and then I need to specify an example value for the date. So if the example value for an example is starting with the month, so I'm gonna put uh, the fifth month, then I put the date, which is the 10th of May, and then I say 2023, and then I say the desired output in this case is the date first, right? The date first, then obviously the month, then we will have suggested transformations from Power Automate. Then we'll choose that because we want the date first, then the month, then the year, right? And then you click on Get Expression, and then that will generate the Power Automate expression that you can be able to use within your Power Automate flow, so that you can be able to format however you want your date to look like. So if you're happy with that, and then you click on apply, you can either copy it or apply, and then you click on got it, and then you can remove the dynamic content that we added earlier on because that one was not formatted. Then you leave it as is, and then ideally the next step for you is to just add an email that is going to be sent out as a notification to the person who requested for that specific blog content to be published for a specific day, or for the Azure OpenAI service model to actually generate a draft for them. So we're going to add another step, and then we're going to say send an email, and then we will choose Office 365 Outlook, and then we will choose send an email V2. And then you need to specify who is it going to. So I am not gonna type in someone's name because I want it to be dynamic. So I'm gonna click on add dynamic content, and then I am going to search. I'm going to search for the author. I remember we stored an email on the author column in our Dataverse table. So I'm gonna choose author, and then the subject would be your request has been approved. And then I'm gonna say hi, um, hi requester, for an example. But ideally, you would add another column for either your first name or your last name. Hi requester, your request for, and then obviously we put the dynamic content, the blog title that uses the different title. So we're gonna use the blog title from our trigger, has been approved. And then ideally at the bottom, we will say um, AI generated draft, right? And then you will change that, and we will then lean on our AI builder model that actually generates that draft. So we're gonna search for text, which comes from that action, this action that we created after our trigger, and then it'll just have it like that. So I'm just gonna put in a little bit of formatting for it to be a little bit better, and then we'll say please edit and submit the final draft by, and put in the due date. So we're gonna say due date. So we're gonna say date, the date from our trigger as well, and then we put it like that. And then on the if no, it'll just be the same email, right? So when it's rejected, it'll be the same email. You just change approved to rejected, and then you put in the AI generated draft. Ideally, either AI said something around, I cannot generate this specific block for you because it does not have, like, for an example, it does not have enough words to use, or the specific title or topic that you edit has less words, right? So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to save this, and then we can test it out, right? So I'm going to click on save. And then the question would be, how do we test it out? And that would be a very great question, because on the entire series, we said um, we are building a project that leverages Power Apps and Power Automate at the same time. We're going to have to lean on the Power App that we built yesterday using Power Apps Copilot, right? So I'm just going to go back to the tab that has Power Apps open, and then I'm going to click on preview. So this is our app that we built yesterday. And then I am going to say new record. The title would be build um, build an AI. Oh, I could say build an AI powered content with uh, Power Automate, with Power Automate or Power Automate Copilot, for an example, right? And then I'll add in the author. So the author would be my email, which is 12, right? And then the content, we'll say test content because we are testing this out. And even the description will be the same. And then we put the due date to tomorrow, which is the 10th, because we want to test out that feature using the um, format data by examples feature within Power Automate. And then if we're okay with this, and then we click on submit, and then it will save it within our Dataverse table. So we then go back to Power Automate, right? And what I normally do whenever I run or build solutions is that I try to first check if my Power Automate is running using the details pane within Power Automate. And then ideally, if it is running, I can be able to either check on is the application, or if is the flow having any errors in between, so it's currently running, so that I can be able to debug and see from step by step, where did it fail or where did it succeed, where is it waiting on. So currently still trying to generate or create the text using Azure OpenAI service, so it's on the step, because ideally you would have this fear of, oh no, my flow is not running, what's going on, and then you run it over and over again. Whereas if you look at the flow run history and you get into that specific run, you can be able to see where is it stuck on, what is it doing, is it taking a decent amount of time to do that step, how can you improve your Power Automate flow in that. So right now, starting and approval, and I've received an approval on one of the emails. So remember, I used one of the users within my developer account to actually assign them to this, right? So I'm gonna go to that, and then you'll see the email that I received just now, and then you can see the title of the blog, and then you can see the message that we put in within our start and wait and approve for an approval request step. And then you can see the information that is ChatGPT 3 generated. So it says, unfortunately, this topic is too short to create a blog post. And then ideally, to create a blog post, it would then advise you that you need to have either a detailed topic and all of those things. And then this is where whoever is the content manager can reject that specific content because they say the Copilot or the Azure OpenAI service model did not was not able to actually generate a draft for that specific person. But in a case where it did do that and generated a proper topic, they will click on approve, and then once they approve it, they click on submit, and once they approve it, that will then ideally create a planner task. So I'm going to switch back to my other browser window, and then you can see now that my Power Automate flow has run successfully, and then you can see only one run happened, and then it created a task here. So you'll see that it created a planner task, and ideally right now it hasn't assigned it to anyone. If I wanted it to assign it, I wanted it to assign that specific task to someone, then I would have to edit the flow and then go to that action, specify who is it that is being assigned to for that specific person. And then ideally that person would know that I have this task assigned to me, it's due by this date, and I need to have it finished for that specific time. So if I just go quickly to the create task, you'll see here on the assigned user's ID, I will need to add in the assigned user, and the assigned user would be the person who's requesting that. So in our case, I would say it's author. I click on author, and then it would assign it to the author. And then once that's been approved, it just sends the email to the person. So if I go back to this account's inbox, so I open Outlook, we'll be able to see what uh, what the result of the request has been. So if I click on the email that just got in now, you can see it says, hi requester, your request for build an AI powered content with Power Automate Copilot has been approved. This is supposed to be rejected because the text that was generated by AI said and suggested that the topic needs to be a little bit more detailed than what it was already been given. So ideally, that's just how you can be able to use um, the describe it to design it feature within Power Automate, and then be able to just edit the Power Automate flow for yourself and add those extra actions that you would then need to meet your specific requirements. And just like how I try to meet my own specific requirements. And you have an entire solution with Power Apps built with Power Apps Copilot and Power Automate built with the describe it to design it feature. Ideally, that's just how you take advantage of AI within the Power Platform, and you can be able to utilize this on the different Power Platform products based off of your own requirements. So I'm just going to quickly switch back to our slides now. And if you want any resources around the solution that we built and understanding the information that was shared in more depth, you can go through these resources that we have on the screen, where we have the intro to Azure OpenAI, and you can understand Azure OpenAI and Power Automate expressions and the key AI use cases that you can ideally use AI for, whether you are using Azure OpenAI as alone and you are using Azure to build the solutions, or you're trying to bring it in within the Power Platform using those key AI use cases. Last thing to mention, make sure that you are registered for the Cloud Skills Challenge that we actually have. You can either follow the link or scan the QR code that is on the screen. The challenge closes on May 22nd, so make sure that you complete those learn modules as soon as possible before it actually closes. And one thing to note is that one of those specific resources that I shared on the previous slide are actually part of the Cloud Skills Challenge. So if you went through those resources and then you tried to be part of the Cloud Skills Challenge, great, you would have had progressed a little bit further because you've already done part of the Cloud Skills Challenge. Hadil, are there any questions?
So Malaysia, thank you so much for the wonderful demo. I think the series was absolutely very resourceful. It was very also very easy to follow. I think this was a great one. Where we kind of merged both AI and kind of low code and no code together, and it merged in the most beautiful way possible. So thank you so much. And yes, I do actually have a few questions that I would love to ask you. So actually, so Malaysia, you've mentioned, of course, while you were doing the demo, that describe it to design it feature. I wanted to know what are there like any limitations to that feature, to the describe it to design it feature?
That's a great question, Hadil. So the limitations around that is that you would need to actually have certain considerations. So currently, that specific feature focuses on a select few connectors within the Power Platform. So it would be your SharePoint, Dataverse, and I think Outlook, Teams. Ideally, they're all listed though when you are trying to use the feature. So it's not all of the connectors that you have within the Power Platform, but a select few. But hopefully in the future, the product team would actually add in more within the describe it to design feature.
Perfect. Yeah, that answers my question. And one more thing, you mentioned, of course, the format data by examples feature as well. This is something that I wanted to also ask if there are like any considerations any developer or user has to keep in mind when using the format data by examples feature. Also, adding to that, what level of technical expertise is required to use that feature? So is it for beginners, for intermediate, for more advanced, developers or users and such?
Yeah, that's also a great question. So, in terms of the level of expertise around the format data by examples, is actually open for everyone to actually use. But normally, I've always think that beginners are much more prone to benefit more from it because ideally they do not understand or know all of the Power Automate expressions that exist out there. And then if you use the format data by examples as a beginner, you are able to generate that Power Automate expression. Then afterwards, you can just review it and look at it and see, oh, this is how you can be able to reach that specific goal.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. And I think the last question, of course, since this series was basically inspired by using the Azure OpenAI, and you talked about the AI Builder connector as well, what considerations should users keep in mind when using the Azure OpenAI Builder connector? Because I think this is a question that maybe we could all think about, and it doesn't really, come to mind except when they use it. So, what considerations should they keep in mind when using the Azure OpenAI Builder connector?
Yeah, so with the Azure OpenAI service, AI Builder connector or model rather, you would need to consider. You saw through the demo itself is that you would need to consider how you then put in responsible AI, and we do encourage responsible AI when it comes to using AI within your solutions and within everything that you are building. So you would need to consider on how you are able to control and have responsible AI or enforce responsible AI within your users. So in stuff like, for an example, what you saw here, do you have either an approval step that will then obviously be sent to someone to review what is being generated by the AI and then either approve it or reject it. And then obviously that will then enable you to be able to have responsible AI within the solutions that you build without having to just build solutions and then people are abusing the power of AI within the solutions that they are building. So you would need to consider on how you are able to have responsible AI within your solutions. So that's one thing.
All right, everyone. I think we have lost Somalese. This is the end of today's session. Thank you all so much. Please let us know if you do happen to have any other questions that we did not answer or such. You can, of course, join us on or follow us or like message us on LinkedIn or on our socials on Twitter as well. Feel free to ask us any questions, and we definitely look forward to having you in our next upcoming sessions. Thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you all learned a thing or two today. And that being said, I'm seeing lots of comments. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. And we will see you in our next upcoming session. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.